I've got a special interest in mangroves. When I first moved to Bayside, Brisbane, I discovered that the land where I garden was once a mangrove. Now, that was many thousands of years ago, but one of the first places I came to was my local mangrove. It's a lovely place to go for a stroll, but importantly, I learnt about the nature of mangrove soil, and by understanding that, it's allowed me to become a better gardener. Mangroves have an important physical function. They protect the land from erosion and storm surges. Look at the way that they fringe the land there. This is critical habitat, rich in animals from land and sea. Most of our commercial fish start their life in mangrove nurseries. But to me, the most important thing is the plants. Mangrove is a term to describe the ecosystem as well as the individual plants. I'm surrounded by the grey mangrove, Australia's most successful species. It even grows as far south as Tasmania. And in winter, these are full of white flowers. In fact, they're really important for honey production. Now, they live in extremely wet, airless conditions. This soil is absolutely saturated and compost rich. And you can tell that the anaerobic conditions prevail because you can smell the sulphur which is produced. These funny little things here sticking up like snorkels are in fact the roots of the grey mangrove. They're pneumatophores. And the reason they've developed these is because they need to get their oxygen directly from the atmosphere. There's nothing down there, so they have to come up and search for it in between the tides. And here is a grey mangrove seed. They have live births, and so these seeds are ready to grow when they drop, but they float on the water until they find some mud where they can grow, and then they germinate. This mud is really nutrient rich. In fact, a mangrove is one of the world's best compost systems available. These roots serve to strain organic matter, like seagrass hanging here. They strain it out as the tides come in, but most important of all, is the way in which the mangroves themselves shed their leaves onto the ground, ensuring nutrient-rich, composting-rich soil. One of the fascinating things about mangroves is the way they deal with a highly salty situation. With the grey mangrove, they take in seawater and then they excrete the salt as crystals from the leaves. Just over here is a red mangrove, and the way this protects itself is by filtering out the salt at the roots. And the roots are the easiest way to identify a red mangrove. They loop and arch out from the ground into the plant. Very distinctive. And of course, having these roots outside in the air is the way that they can breathe. Not only are they a nursery, they're also a bit of a pantry. There aren't many succulents in Australia, but this is one of them. It's a halophyte, which means it likes growing in salty conditions. This one is called Sarcocornia, and you can propagate it by tip cuttings like this, but I enjoy eating it. It tastes rather like salted celery, so you can add it to stews and stir-fries and salads, and blanched, it's a really nice vegetable, just with a bit of butter. Further inland, on the fringe of the mangroves, where the high tides just lap in spring, some very interesting plants. This one is sea blight. It's got a cosmopolitan distribution. It's a true succulent, and it doesn't mind salt. You can propagate it in spring and summer with tip cuttings about this long, and it's pieces just this long, which are ideal for eating. It's really delicious, and it pickles really well. And just over here is quite an important grass. This is saltine, Sporobolus virginicus, and it's quite commonly grown in Western Australia for turf. Because it's salt tolerant, it works really well in a coastal situation. Over time, all the sediments that collect in mangroves form a very deep, sticky soil. Earlier I said that through learning how mangroves work, I've become a better gardener. Well, this is what I originally had. A very fine, powdery, sandy topsoil, and underneath that, a very heavy, sticky clay. What I did was to mix the two layers together, and by adding a lot of compost, I've produced a really workable soil. Normally you'd use gypsum on clay to break it up and make it more workable, but with mangrove soil, it makes it worse. It makes it even gluier, so you don't do that. But by adding dolomite as well, I've sweetened the soil, and now I've got a really good result. The reason this is important is because there are mangrove soils all around coastal Australia, and learning to do what I've done can help us all become better gardeners.